Once, in a fold of the hills, there was a stately home called Badgerwood House. Families came to visit it and play and have picnics in its beautiful park. Behind the house was a children's farmyard with lots of animals. One of the animals was a piglet. His name was Piggo.
Piggo on thin ice. It was winter. All of Badgerwood had turned white. Piggo was running across the stiff, crunchy grass to the goldfish pond. Suddenly, an ear-splitting sound made him jump. A ghastly screech rang out across the park, and he stared round to see what it was. Mr. Peacock, high on a wall nearby, had thrown back his head and screeched. He wasn't trying to frighten anybody, but like all peacocks, he had a horrible screechy voice. Then Piggo heard feet behind him. It was his friend Chloe, the brown nanny goat. "Did you hear that terrible racket?" she asked Piggo loudly. "What a noise! With a voice like that, Mr. Peacock needs oiling." Piggo said, "Shh, Chloe, he might hear. It's not his fault. I was just going to see the fish." "I'll come too," said Chloe. At the pond, Piggo had a shock. It had gone hard. He could still see the fish, but the top of the water was as hard as stone. "What's happened?" he asked Chloe. "Oh, it's ice. Ice comes when it's cold," Chloe told him. Piggo stared at her. "Does it? Honestly?" "Oh, yes," Chloe went on. "I know all about ice. You can walk on it. It's quite safe." "Can you?" asked Piggo. "Really? Can you walk on the water and look down at the fishes?" "Oh, yes," Chloe said. "You try. The ducks and geese do it every winter." So Piggo got up onto the wall that ran round the goldfish pond. He carefully put one foot out onto the ice and then another. There was a creak. "That's all right. Ice always creaks," Chloe said airily. So Piggo stepped out onto the ice with all 4 feet. Looking down, he could see the fish dart away, frightened. He had never seen ice before, and so did not know what a dangerous thing he was doing. He took one more step. There was a loud, groaning creak, and the whole sheet of ice gave way. Piggo was plunged into the freezing cold water. Jagged points of ice stuck up all around his terrified face. He began to squeal with cold and terror. He splashed madly with his feet, but the water was icy cold and too deep for a little piglet to be able to touch the bottom. Chloe had no idea that the ice would break. She gaped helplessly at Piggo struggling among the broken, clashing ice. Then she seemed to wake up and stared desperately all around the lawn for help. Mr. Peacock was still up on his wall. She tore across to the bottom of it. "Mr. Peacock! Oh, Mr. Peacock!" she cried. "Yes," came down the voice coldly. He was not fond of Chloe and her rude remarks. "Oh, please help, Mr. Peacock! Piggo has fallen in the pond. He'll drown." Mr. Peacock looked across at the pond, shocked. "Run for Clarence," he ordered. "I will sing for help." He threw back his head and screeched at the top of his voice. Again and again the blood-curdling scream rang out across the park. All the animals stopped and looked up. Clarence heard too, and ran for the arch into the gardens. As he reached it, he was nearly bowled over by Chloe, who crashed into his knees. Looking up, he saw water splashing in the pond. "Oh, I'm blowed," he said in a frightening sort of way, and began to run. As he ran, he struggled out of his jacket. He reached the pond, plunged his arms into the freezing water, grabbed Piggo and heaved him out. Piggo could not feel his legs at all. He felt a horrible coldness all over and a different sort of sleepiness. Clarence wrapped his warm tweedy jacket tightly round Piggo and ran, rubbing Piggo as he went, back to the farmyard and to his warm office. There was a towel on the radiator. Clarence sat down with Piggo across his lap, took the warm towel and rubbed Piggo hard all over. "Come on, Piggo," he said in a funny, urgent voice. "Come on, boy." After a while, the feeling came back into Piggo's legs, but he felt dreadful. Clarence put him in a warm box under the radiator and kept coming to look at him. "That was a near thing, Piggo," he said at last, ruffling Piggo's ear. "You should never, never get on ice over deep water. Whatever made you think of doing a thing like that?" Chloe waited anxiously outside to see her friend. She would never tell anyone to stand on ice again, and neither would she ever be rude about Mr. Peacock. Screechy or not, his voice really had saved the day.